You're listening to the Proposify Biz Chat with Kyle Racky, a podcast for entrepreneurs looking to scale. This episode is brought to you by Proposify, software that streamlines your proposal process, impresses clients, and helps you close more deals. Head to proposify.com to start your free trial today.
Hey there, everyone. I am Kyle Racky, and you are watching or listening to the Proposify Biz Chat. On today's show, I am joined by Sam Mullikarjunan. He's a marketing fellow at HubSpot and former head of growth at HubSpot Labs, which is the experimental arm of the world's #1 sales and marketing platform, HubSpot. Sam teaches advanced digital marketing at the Harvard Division of Continuing Education and is co-author of the book, How to Sell Better Than Amazon. We're excited to have Sam on the show today. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. It was very nice of the person who helped schedule this interview to kind of write out phonetically your last name. So otherwise, I wouldn't have made that work. But
they also
that's the last time.
They will send you a recording too, if you ask. There's a pre-recording that they have of me pronouncing it. But I'm considering legally changing my name to Sam from HubSpot, anyways. From is a great middle name. You know, HubSpot's a unique last name. More people say it anyways. So.
It's true. I mean, you know, if you're not at HubSpot when you're like, I don't know, approaching retirement and you're still Sam at HubSpot, it might be just an odd story for your grandchildren, but.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, little Timmy HubSpot and Jessica HubSpot. Yeah.
They're the HubSpot crew, the HubSpot clan. Very cool. Well, glad to have you on the show. You know, HubSpot, very long-standing tradition of producing great content, you know, as a company and you yourself. So what we're really going to cover today is for anybody listening, if you've been doing marketing for your own business for a long time, let's say you're an entrepreneur, you're growing your team, and maybe you've got a writer on staff, maybe a digital marketer who runs your Facebook, your Google advertising, but you're kind of ready to take it to the next level and get a true CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, at your company. You wrote a really interesting blog post that's up on your Medium blog, which is called How Not to Fuck Up Your First 90 Days as a CMO. So what we're going to do today is sort of pull some lessons from that blog post. And of course we can, go down alternative paths and do whatever is interesting, but, really talk about what to look for when you're hiring a CMO and what you should expect to get out of them within the first 90 days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. So the average tenure of a CMO in the United States is a little bit under a year and a half on average. Which is a really depressing statistic, and the credibility within the organization is low, right? So a lot of the surveys, the survey that CEB, the Corporate Executive Board, 73% of CEOs don't think that marketing can prove that it drives business value, and things like that. And when you trace all of that back, when you look at the people who failed, my thesis and what I try and coach people on is that it's usually the first 90 days. If you nail that, the beginning, then you're fine. But if you get off to a really slow start, things start to get disorganized, programs start going off, it can get bad relatively quickly.
It's funny you say that. 90 days seems, 3 months, 1 quarter seem to be almost a way just for us in terms of humans, how we think about time. We at my company, Proposify, which is a SaaS business, much like HubSpot, we always look at the first 90 days in terms of client onboarding. So if somebody maybe signs up to a paid Proposify account, maybe it's similar with HubSpot, but they haven't really utilized it. They haven't adopted it into their workflow within the first 90 days, then they're probably going to churn out at some point. If you can get them past that 90-day mark, they're probably going to be a customer for life. So it's funny how it's almost the same way with your hires, especially a C-level, like a CMO, that's like you want to get them fully adopted and into your workflow within that 90 days, or they'll probably churn out like a customer.
Yeah, I've not approached it from that perspective, ironically, given our shared background in SaaS, but we had the same concept. So we had something called the Customer Happiness Index, which was a regression analysis against a bunch of actions correlated to churn. So we knew that, like, if you didn't log in, once or a couple times a week, then you're probably likely to churn. And it created this aggregate score for us. And the onboarding manager's role is to keep the customer happiness index up so that you're doing all the things that are correlated with your long-term success, right? So if you're not sending any emails and you're paying for an email tool, that's a pretty bad sign. We know that intuitively. And yeah, you're right. It's the exact same thing when you're onboarding any new employee, but particularly somebody who stands at sort of this weird technological and organizational cross-section, like the person who's going to be running the marketing initiatives. If they're not meeting the right people in the beginning, if they're not getting some of that going, that clock starts ticking on all of us whenever we join a company. And you're right. They're going to churn out.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess like before we dig into the weeds as far as what you're looking for as a CMO, especially within that first 90 days, to you, and you've probably had a lot of experience with this. My experience being that I have there's a CMO at Proposify, Patrick, who's been on some shows before. Is there a difference, I guess, between a CMO who works at a SaaS business or a CMO that works somewhere else? I'm sure in terms of tactically the things that they're doing on a day-to-day basis might be different, but is there sort of a different breed of SaaS CMO from, say, somebody who's CMO at Nike?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about SaaS is, and this is, believe it or not, a relatively new concept in economics, the SaaS economics, where you can actually lose money to acquire a customer because you're really good at keeping customers. Then you can break even after a certain period of time and have some long-term monetization. And that bit, instead of P&L, profit and loss, looking at the LTV to CAC, so the lifetime value as a ratio to the cost of acquiring a customer, that mentality was sort of pioneered in the SaaS industry. And somebody at Nike, they're pretty sophisticated, but some of those consumer goods companies don't have the same level of sophistication in the model. So people wonder, right, how does your company and my company and SaaS companies, how do we spend so much money doing really awesome marketing? There's like 40 people on our content team alone. The reason that we can do that is because we can spend, I don't know if the actual number is public, but let's call it 10 times what the average customer pays us per month in order to acquire a customer. And then we're really good at keeping the customers, so we monetize that over time. And I think that SaaS CMOs in particular have had to have a really solid grasp on the economics of the business and a really tight alignment with sales, because it's so intuitive that sales costs plus marketing costs equals CAC. And then whatever the sales and marketing inputs are into the business model is going to be the health of the revenue that's coming out of it. I think that's just a lot more intuitive than if you're selling like iPad covers or something where the transaction is very, very infrequent. I don't know if that mentality has transferred over, but it should.
Do you think that maybe a CMO at a SaaS business, because it's funny, is when I bring that up, you jump into a lot of real core business metrics in terms of funnel, in terms of acquisition cost, lifetime value, all those types of things. Those, traditionally, those aren't really marketer skill sets. Those have sort of become a marketer skill set. Getting more analytical, getting more into, Facebook ads maybe, or Google ads, and looking at like, what's the cost per click? Are we making that back? Are we spending too much? Traditionally marketing being more in the terms of brand value, communication, how we're being perceived by our audience. I guess what's your kind of thoughts there? Should your CMO be a little more left-brained and more analytical, more all about the data? More on the right side and kind of like really a good brand guy? Because I'm thinking the CMO at Nike is probably going to be a little bit more brand focused than they are unit economics. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think that we've always looked at the soft skills as the base unit for a marketer. So the branding, PR, the creative aspects, some of that sort of stuff, and looked at the analytics as a force multiplier. I would say it's actually probably the other way around, where you need to have a grasp on how efficient you're being with your spend. So the CEO is giving you money. Are you turning that money into, if he gives you $1 or she gives you $1, are you turning that dollar into $3? Are you turning it into $7, et cetera? Are you able to really power growth? That machine is broken in the vast majority of companies that I look at. First of all, because it's never been measured in that way. But second of all, because as you said, it's new to the skill set. Solving that problem has more leverage and growth on the business generally than in terms of dollar in, dollar out than brand initiatives. But brand initiatives are definitely a force multiplier, right? So we had this at HubSpot. We didn't have a PR team until, I don't know, 4 years ago, something like that, shortly before we went public. And we didn't really have a brand and creative team until shortly before that either, because our goal was customer acquisition and customer retention. You get that model to work, and then once you got sort of a beautifully operating model from that perspective, then you say, okay, how do I expand further out into the universe to things I don't understand as well, right? So it's like we sort of understand our solar system, and we can explore our solar system. We understand how everything works. Everything's moving around well. Now we can sort of go into the black holes of the universe where the laws of physics break down and we don't understand how anything actually works, which is branding. Which, again, I always like to reinforce that all of marketing, but particularly branding, PR, et cetera, is a social science. All we can say is that most people under a certain set of circumstances, when faced with this messaging, will react in somewhat of the similar way. Take that answer to a physics professor and see what they say to you.
But I love that you took a nerdy topic like digital marketing and used an even nerdier analogy of physics and, the galaxy and black holes. So kudos.
Bring me on because I'm cool. So, yeah.
So your CMO, especially at a SaaS company, but maybe a lot of other types of companies, should be kind of more analytical, more focused on unit economics and being able to, spend $1 and make $3 or more back, ideally. And you can kind of fill in the gaps with people who are PR and content and branding and that sort of thing. So, your CMO starts, let's say you've got, to date, you've only hired a couple of people on your marketing team, maybe a designer, a writer, people like that. What are you expecting out of this CMO? What do those first 90 days look like, if you can break that down for us?
So depending on the type of business, the first concern that I have is alignment. The company is generally very isolated from the marketing team, or the marketing team is isolated from the company. I started my career in sales, so making fun of marketers sort of comes naturally to me. But we did a survey. 87% of the terms that sales and marketing professionals use to describe each other are negative. And the last time I gave my couples therapy for sales and marketing leaders, somebody came up to me and said, "I hate marketers; they just get in the way." You've got to solve that problem first. And when you're talking about looking at analytics, looking at the economics of the business, yes, that is a great set of guideposts for the marketing organization to optimize sort of its impact on the company. It's also hugely impactful to credibility. So, we get literally love letters from our sales team at HubSpot, and they'll try anything we tell them to, because I'm showing them charts, or I'm showing them graphs that are like, okay, here's where the leads that you closed from, here's where they came from. They came from the blog. I realize you think you like webinar leads, but webinar leads actually kind of suck. So instead, we're going to do more of the blog leads, because they close at a 4 times higher rate. I've yet to meet a sales organization that says, I realize they close at a higher rate, but I still don't want you working at the blog. I want you to do a trade show booth instead.
By the way, do webinar leads actually suck, or was that just a hypothetical?
It's actually the inverse. So the sales reps at HubSpot thought webinar leads really sucked, but we were able to pull the data and show them that they closed at a significantly higher rate. As you might assume, if somebody sits through a 50 minutes of me talking about Pinterest or something like that, they're generally a very interested.
Pretty high, yeah. I just wanted to clarify that, because when I heard you say that, I was like, whoa, is that real, or is that just a made up example? So
the caveat is you have to test that for yourself, because they may be great for me, they may suck for you. The answer is always, it depends, and test for yourself.
Yeah. So, sales and marketing, long-standing battle with each other. They have that kind of symbiotic relationship where the sales needs marketing to drive leads, and they're kind of like an iron lung situation. They depend on each other for survival, but they're not happy about it. They could do with them. So you're saying CMO wants to get aligned with the sales team, assuming maybe there's a VP of sales or a sales director, and that new CMO needs to kind of gel with them and get on the same page.
Yeah, if there isn't, if you're, for example, an e-commerce company, you still have a sales rep. It's the shopping cart. And you need to make sure that you have a really good understanding of its limitations. You have a good understanding of what has and has not worked in the past in terms of driving sales, and that you spend a fair bit of time focusing on that part of the funnel. So a lot of CMOs come in, or marketing leaders in general come in, and their goal is to like 10x traffic. And yes, you can 10x traffic, you will almost certainly get more sales, but not necessarily. First of all, it depends on the quality of the traffic. But second of all, the sales engine may not be equipped to handle an increase in volume. And also, especially if you're doing things like blogging and social media, search engine optimization, where you're going further back into the research phase of the buying cycle instead of like PPC for buy now. You may really need to work with the sales team on making sure that the types of leads you're generating, they're actually willing to call. I've talked to a ton of sales teams where the sales reps literally won't call inbound leads because they know the outbound process better. Prospect, do some research, do the warm call, and they know that if they do that 100 times a day, they're going to get 20 appointments, they're going to get one customer, as opposed to having to learn a new process. So yeah, you absolutely have to solve that. And the other thing that I want people to think about in the very beginning when you're working with sales, not only does it build credibility, but it is better economics. Sales enablement. It's one of the most underrated skills in the entire marketing profession, is that handoff between marketing and sales. And then the problems that sales has in the sales process, where they need to learn more about the prospect, they need to be able to customize their content to the prospect, whatever those sort of bottlenecks are. Marketing is great at solving some of those problems. And if you can increase that close rate from like 5% to 10%, like the win rate, not only will your sales organization love you forever, invite you to their wedding. It's weird. It really is weird. But you'll have a much bigger impact on the business than, say, doubling traffic or something like that in terms of the revenue that you're generating.
Helping them convert. We a year and a half ago, we had a salesperson start at our company, Proposify. And she was pretty hungry. She was a go-getter, and she was like, I want to actually have a proposal template because we're proposal software. So I want a proposal. Actually, she didn't even say I want a proposal template. She just went ahead and made one and sent it off to leads. And then of course marketing sees that and they're like, oh God, a salesperson designed it. It's like bad for branding. It doesn't look like what we want, but she just kind of wanted to go after those leads. So, marketing can, if they're on the same page, empower the salespeople, give them the tools they need to close the deal and not kind of leave it to them to just sort of figure it out on their own.
And even a step further. So when I'm creating lead conversion endpoints, so ebooks, webinars, that sort of stuff too, I have pre-written out, because I've talked to the sales reps, how I expect that phone call to start. So in my mind, what's the sound bite that starts that? So if you download the guide to Pinterest, right, I've pre-written out how I expect this conversation between a sales rep and a prospect to start. Because at the beginning phase, that is our job. How do we start off an interesting, valuable conversation between two human beings? It's like we're setting people up on a blind date sort of thing. And you wouldn't set your friend up on a blind date and then tell them nothing about the other person.
Yeah.
Right. So I ask some of those questions, and if you get really, really good at that, you're right. A lot of the stuff that the sales culture is always going to say, do it yourself, do it harder. If you're behind on quota, come in earlier, stay later. That's their culture. It's not generally ask the design team to make something interesting. But if we can dig into some of that, we can solve a lot of their problems, which not only solves the alignment piece, helps them close more leads and helps generate more revenue.
So, you're assuming the marketer, the CMO gets him or herself and the marketing team on the same page, aligned with sales. Everybody's happy. They're kind of loving each other. I suppose the CMO hasn't built up trust just yet. They're still new, still first 90 days. What comes next?
So the next phase really is digging into your unit economics and your buyer personas. So we sort of know that different types of customers are worth different amounts, right? We've all had customers where, like, if I just had 1,000 of these, I'd be in great shape. And we've all had sort of the Han Solo moment. I'm nerding it up for you. The Han Solo moment, like, no reward is worth this kind of customer.
Yeah. Can I pause you?
Yeah.
Just with regards to Han Solo, did you know, I just found this out today, Al Pacino turned down the role of Han Solo in the original Star Wars.
I did not know that, but I'm really glad because Al Pacino doesn't quite have that sort of like loose swagger, I think that Han Solo really needed.
Yeah, I don't know. 1977 Al Pacino was pretty
Yeah,
cool. He's
yeah,
a little
maybe.
small though for the role. You always think of Han Solo as being strapping.
I don't know. I mean, like actually, smaller might be better because it makes Chewbacca look even larger. It's sort of comical. It's like I have two dogs. One's a corgi mix and one's like a boxer mix. But the corgi mix is in charge because
Right.
she's older, and it's really hilarious watching them walk around and the big dog following my little dog. Just doing whatever she says. So
There you go. I just threw you off track. You brought up Star
uh,
Wars.
yeah, you can't throw me off track. But anyways, figuring out what those types of customers are, figuring out what the dimensions are that identify them. So how do you figure out these people before they get to sales? First of all, so you can give that information to sales, and second of all, so that you can look back at what you're doing and see what's bringing people in. Um, I once tried to write the e-commerce marketer's guide to advanced statistics, and my sales team threatened to throw me out of the 4-story window because HubSpot doesn't do advanced statistics, first of all. Second of all, any marketer who's going to download the HubSpot guide to, or the e-commerce marketer's guide to advanced statistics, in our experience back then, was overthinking the problem, right? They weren't focusing on, most of those people who are doing advanced statistics weren't doing like abandoned cart nurturing and really basic stuff. It would be a really painful sales call. So figuring out where the healthy customers are coming from, investing more in the top of the funnel there, now that you've done your bottom of the funnel investing more in the top of the funnel there, starting to build that engine of bringing in more traffic, more qualified leads, and starting that early because that takes a while. It's going to take 3, 6, 9 months of consistent content creation, SEO, engaging on social media, and running effective ad campaigns before you're really starting to learn enough about what you're doing that you're going to be growing in any kind of intelligent way that's not just sort of a shotgun blast.
Mm-hmm. So you want your CMO to really dig in, understand buyer personas. Would you recommend doing really hands-on customer calls or even like going over to some of their offices, talking to them one-on-one?
Yeah. So it's something that Google was one of our early investors. They really beat into us, was the importance of watching your users use the system, and understanding sort of the second order, what we call jobs to be done. So Henry Ford is the most famous quote on this, which is that if I'd asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Yeah.
Obviously, he didn't found the Henry Ford Horse Breeding Corporation. It was the Henry Ford Motor Company. And really understanding what problems are they trying to solve, et cetera. Because marketers, we ran into this in the beginning. Marketers, for example, wanted an advanced analytics suite, or they wanted marketing automation. And we'll talk to some of them, and they're generating like 100 leads a month. Call all of them, right? If you're generating 100 leads a month, that's, just call and see like, how's their Tuesday going, right? That's not a volume in which analytics has any statistical significance, and it's not a volume in which marketing automation is going to be particularly useful. The real job to be done there is they want to power business growth. They want to serve the sales team better. And when you start digging into some of those things, not only can you onboard and do customer service better, build a better product for them, but you can also understand from a marketing perspective, not just what they were looking for, but what they really meant. And when you understand that, you can start getting them earlier and earlier in the buying cycle. This is a key point. If you're competing for customers further down in the buying cycle, people who know what they want to buy and are ready to buy, it's a bloodbath. First of all, the PPC costs are going to be much higher because the competition is going to be higher because it's easy. It's really, really easy to bid on, buy O2 Cool fan that I have sitting next to me, right? That's easy. And the other thing is a lot of what's going to be left is price competition. Especially e-commerce marketers love to whine about this. The only thing they care about is who has the cheapest price. And don't get me wrong, I used to be CMO at cheaphumidors.com. We sold humidors cheaply. That was our thing.
I'm sorry, what's a humidor?
Oh, really? So humidor is the wooden box that you keep cigars in.
Oh, I know I heard the name before. I never knew what it was.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so
I keep mine in a Ziploc bag, my cigars, so.
we were so close to being friends. We were so close to being friends with the Star Wars jokes and everything else like that. And then you said that.
I'm just kidding. I barely smoke cigars, but every now and then.
We'll work on that. Next time you want one, come over. You can grab one out of my hand.
You're in Boston, right? Because you're in HubSpot.
Usually, actually, I live in Tampa. So
okay.
the Boston's where the home office is, but I live in Tampa. Yeah.
All right.
But if you want to not have a sales process that's built around price, you have to get to them earlier, right? So one of my favorite sales quotes is that a sale isn't closed; it's the inevitable result of a well-executed process. By the time we get through our closing sequence, our nurturing sequence, we were the people who, using content, helped them identify and define their problem. We helped educate them on their problem. We helped them feel confident that they could solve their problem. We helped them make a decision. Price, not usually a factor at that point, right?
Yeah.
Because in their mind, they've already invested so much in this relationship with the brand, with the decision-making process, that if they go to somewhere else just because it's cheaper, there's actually a risk coefficient in their own mind. There's something they're losing by going to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
We complain about getting Amazon, but Amazon is similar. Amazon does not always, by far, have the lowest prices. But one of my favorite Jeff Bezos quotes is, "We don't make money when we sell things. We make money when we help people make purchase decisions."
Right.
And that's what they focus on. When I find a product on Amazon, I don't suddenly then hop onto the internet to start seeing if I can find it anywhere else. One click buy.
That's the way I look at things, because I'm actually too lazy to price shop, because to me, it's like, I found it, it's here. Like, okay, I get it 7 cents cheaper on a different website. That's like a minute I could be wasting time on Instagram or something, right? So
laziness is a symptom of trust. So what you're actually saying, though, there is that you trust this. If I'm lazy on the couch, I'm generally trusting that I'm going to have food, shelter, water, electricity, and stuff like that.
That's a good point.
Once I no longer trust that, I generally leave and go get a job. It's the same thing when I'm on a website. If I'm not going to somebody else to buy from them, if I might feel it's like I'm just being lazy. But what it really means is that I trust them. I trust the quality, I trust the experience.
Well, speaking of price, and I want to bring this up because, HubSpot traditionally has been known as not the cheapest tool around, right? It's, it's an investment. And from what I've read, because HubSpot's history is pretty public. You guys kind of migrated towards the mid-market, got a lot of agency partners to kind of help close, because you realize that, just Joe Mechanic who wants to get into inbound marketing probably isn't going to stick around very long as a customer just because he's using the software. So they really need to get adopted and into it. And, there's a price tag behind it. I don't know if it's been in the last year, or I don't know what you can comment on, but anything you can comment on would be helpful. HubSpot, I noticed, actually now has a freemium plan on the inbound marketing software. What, is the idea that since you guys are public, you kind of want to broaden out and sort of attack the lower end of the market? What's sort of the strategy there?
Yeah. So first of all the people I've talked to, you really hit the nail on the head for the purpose of our agency partner network. We actually have a really good demand generation engine, really good sales engine, and we really love and value the sales that our partners bring to us. But their main value does come from their ability to help people do better marketing. And I got to tell you, it was tempting, really tempting back in the day before we had that partner program. And we had customers that are like, listen, I'll pay you an extra 20 grand a month if you just do this stuff for me. And we're like, 20 grand a month? Like, oh, that's like good recurring revenue. But
you could have had an agency.
Yeah, but then we're becoming a services company. We're becoming an agency. Wasn't our core competency. It's hard to scale. And frankly, we wanted to let people who were good at that do that, right? We were good at software. We were good at that sort of stuff.
Totally.
Building a great experience. We let them do that. So that is, you're right, the purpose of the agency program is to help people do better marketing. And one of the realizations, frankly, that led us to was that a lot of our agency partners were running into prospects that they couldn't bring on because their problems were, frankly, too basic, right? People who were transitioning from, I need a website, and the best game in town is WordPress, right? WordPress still powers like some ludicrous 80% of the internet or something like that, but it's not actually that user friendly. And it requires some setup and adding on all the modules. And WordPress does not tell you what to do and how to do it better. Where there are people who are just like, okay, I have a website, but I need some way to capture leads and send them to a sales team. Fairly easy problem to solve. And in terms of our servers, it doesn't cost a lot of money. And so we're looking at this phenomenon, and it's one of the reasons why people ask why we haven't gone into the enterprise and stuff. For example, the vast majority of opportunity in marketing comes from doing this simple thing. The e-commerce is a great example. I'd love to tell you that advanced statistics is what most e-commerce companies need. We did a survey and found that 60% of e-commerce companies weren't even measuring their abandoned cart rate, much less doing any kind of nurturing. That's stupid simple. You don't even need HubSpot for that. You can do that with any number of like basic tools. So that was something we really focused on, is how do we help people make the jump from the way they did marketing 20 years ago to today? And that's not very hard. And it's something that, you're right, somebody's not going to pay $250, $300, $500 a month for our core HubSpot offerings in order to do. So part of that is the rising tide raises all boats philosophy. Our biggest impediment to growth is not a competitor. It's not somebody using some other tools. It's the fact that most people in the world still do, I won't call it terrible, but I'll call it old school sales and marketing, right? You buy a list and you spam it 3 times a week with a coupon. You do a bunch of cold calling. You do some black hat SEO or whatever, or you just waste a bunch of money on PPC ads that you don't know how they're performing at best. So we have to solve that problem before we can really hit the second level growth.
So if I'm hearing it correctly, it's like going to the freemium model now is sort of your way to catch more fish, who aren't quite sophisticated enough to actually jump in and start doing real, more advanced style marketing. It's essentially a gateway drug, which I think is what the best freemium is, right? Like
the first dose is always free. Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I once heard Gary Vaynerchuk say, actually, I think I read it in his latest book, Crushing It, that he's on Snapchat not because it's going to help his brand any more than he does with all of his other channels. It's because the younger generation is on Snapchat and they'll be customers in 10 years. So he's like playing the long game. It's kind of like similar in a way. You want to get them just starting out using maybe the free tools so that eventually they'll get the basics in place and then migrate to the more advanced ones. Is that right?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, HubSpot started in 2006. The concept of freemium was really new. So SaaS was relatively new, but the concept of freemium was definitely relatively new. I would guess that if Brian and Dharmesh were launching HubSpot now, or even in like 2011 or 2012, it would have been built from the ground up as a freemium platform. Because our true love has always been in the small business space and the mid-sized business space. I love having customers who are talking to me like, you put my daughter through college kind of stories. That was where we started. That's always been our true love. And that's where freemium really works, because you're right, those customers with basic use cases, once they get good at solving them, they got to grow. And they're not gonna suddenly switch to some other solution when they've been using you and you're who got them to where they are now.
And like you also said that you need to, this is going to like call back way to earlier in the interview, you're talking about how you can go into like the far reaches of outer space once you've nailed the solar system. And I view, my company Proposify is not, anywhere close to as big as HubSpot. But we experimented a little bit with freemium in the earlier days, but we ran like a month test, realized it's going to drive a ton of top of funnel leads, but ultimately we couldn't survive because we were bootstrapped. We couldn't survive a freemium because the payback period was just too long. Like, yeah, maybe in a couple of years we'd have millions of people using it and that would translate into serious growth, but we wouldn't survive that. So it's almost like HubSpot got to a point where, okay, you're public, you've really nailed the mid-market. Now you can start going crazy, like, try freemium, You can survive that. But I'd almost say it's like if you're a SaaS business, you got to either decide from the beginning, like Trello, this is going to be a free tool. It's the whole use case is designed around free. And then, that 1% becomes a paying customer, or be paid only and then experiment with freemium when you're no longer fragile. That's my view on it. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. First of all, you and I can just have like a very nerdy concept on or talk about SaaS economics. One of the things you said is very true, which is you can grow yourself out of business. So if you're really good at keeping customers, you can spend more to get customers. You can even spend more than they pay you initially. That being said, if you are losing cash fast because you're acquiring a lot of customers really, really fast, even though you may eventually get that payback, you can just run out of cash. I see it happen to startups all the time. And then you've got to go either raise a round at unfavorable terms or fold the doors. So you're absolutely right that you have to sort of intelligently manage your expenses in the early days. Obviously, Eric Ries with the Lean Startup and some of that stuff is the seminal work on that mentality. But the other thing is, you sort of said it earlier when you were talking about defending the low end of the market. It does build this incredible acquisition engine for you, and if you can power that, so Slack, one of the most beautifully marketed companies in the world. To this day, I don't understand why it's better than HipChat. Like that's when we started on HipChat and we switched to Slack. I don't know, maybe like 5 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, same.
And really, I don't understand why they're different than AOL Instant Messenger. Like I'm having chats and sending back and forth, messages in between people. But they built some great team functions and did some of this stuff, and they made it free so that everybody in the world was using these tools. And I will tell you, I'll give you a little bit of behind the curtain on part of our strategy. As we're expanding, for example, into the sales realm, one of the strategies is you can sell to the VP of sales. And that's kind of brutal, right? So VPs of sales are hard to sell to. They're hard to reach. They've got a lot on their plate other than buying technology. The sales organization doesn't always have a strong history of buying technology at all. They use whatever the ITT gives them, et cetera. So our strategy when we first started, when we launched Signals, which was our first sales product, was let's build something that all the sales reps at your company are going to be using, and it's free. But then there's this higher order functionality that's a paid upgrade that sort of that gives maybe the management insight, or it helps team sharing and stuff like that. And then you've got all these sales reps banging down your door saying, hey, we really need a premium version of this. So one of the advantages of freemium, at least for us, has been the ability to sell from the bottom up into sales organizations rather than selling from the top down.
Interesting. Yeah, that's true. It's like and we experience this sometimes at Proposify, where somebody will start a free trial and we'll think they're just a small customer, but really they're just a salesperson within a bigger organization. And I think we haven't quite figured out yet how to identify who those people are and then try to either reach their VP sales or their sales director, because we just don't have the freemium plan that would let you do something like that, which is get all your sales reps using this tool because it's fun and easy. And then eventually they're like, oh, we ran out of data, or we ran out of, contacts, or whatever the kind of paywall is. Now we need to go bug our boss to get us on a paid account. It's a really different way of selling, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's beautiful too, because then the VP of sales or the IT person or whatever calls you and says like, all right, you managed to get 100 of my reps using this damn tool. What is this going to cost me to like get set up and stuff to have the insight and the team functionality and ungate it for them? We don't have to sell to them. We don't have to prove the value, because the value has already been proven. And this isn't a new concept, right? So Publix is the big supermarket chain here in Florida, and I can't walk around the grocery store without walking past probably 15 different free sample trays, right? So, you're taking the free sample, you're trying it, you're getting some value. And in the case of food, it's sort of the satisfaction of how good it tastes. In the case of software, I'm getting slightly better. I'm getting a little bit better at this. That retention hook, I'm getting a taste of this. It just makes sense to us that we should be able to try something before we buy it, and solve some of the basic problems, and then we'll pay to solve the advanced problems or to have unlimited functionality forever.
Mm-hmm. Where it gets a little complicated is that when you've got a sales team, like, if you're used to a certain model of selling, which is that top-down approach, we got our SDRs, we're making cold calls to all the VPs and directors and C-level execs to try to get them on a demo or some kind of decision maker. And then, we put them into trial. It's got a time period, blah, blah, blah. Doing both of those at the same time is really difficult, because when you have freemium, now all of a sudden there's no longer a time constraint. So it's kind of harder for your sales guy to like call up a lead and be like, hey, I see you're using the free version of Proposify. Let's get you on a paid account. Is there like, we haven't figured that out, because it's almost like you go MailChimp or Slack and you just go full on marketing driven leads into a freemium product. They'll eventually upgrade on their own, just the way the system, the software, and the funnel is designed. Or you go sales first approach, which I know traditionally has been HubSpot's bread and butter, is, you know, get leads in the door through content and then get salespeople to get them on the software. How do you guys balance those two different models?
So we definitely had that tension in the early days between what we call the code funnel and the acquisition funnel, or the sales team's funnel. There were two big changes that powered it. One is most people comp their sales reps, even in SaaS, off of a big front-loaded commission based on some multiple to what the initial sale was, right? We added a secondary layer to that of the value of the sales reps' overall install base. So the multipliers you get higher, your promotion criteria get higher, everything else gets higher based on the overall growth and health of your install base. So just because you bring somebody on as free and they stay free, or maybe they upgrade to $20 a month or $50 a month, not worth calling on necessarily aggressively. As they grow over time, as you get some of those easy wins, that makes the sales rep more money. And the sales reps like money. It's sort of one of their primary motivators. The other thing that we did was recognize and respect this idea that it's not just the customer has a relationship with marketing, now the customer has a relationship with sales, then the customer has a relationship with support. They move back and forth. So a sales rep may call on a prospect who's using the free tool, check in on them, do one of the free assessments, decide they're not a good fit right now, log some data in the CRM, and that should get kicked back to the marketing team, who now has the responsibility for nurturing and maintaining that person. And the handoff is hard. Handing off from marketing to sales is hard. Handing off from sales back to marketing is also really hard, right? Mm-hmm. It's sort of awkward that like, okay, like I'm not important enough now to get phone calls. And we spent a lot of time trying to figure out, and this is where a lot of the HubSpot Academy, inbound.org, community stuff, education, a lot of that stuff has come in. How do we get really, really good at passing people back from marketing to sales, from sales back to marketing, from marketing back to sales again, maybe sales back to marketing again. It's not about us and advancing them through the funnel. It's about identifying where they are in their life cycle and serving up the relevant experience. If you want to spend the rest of your life using our free tools, that's fine. I ran a report one time the other day. We had one lead who's downloaded 300 and some odd ebooks. Okay, that's fine, whatever. You're using us as your personal library. I get it. But we're paying attention for those indicators. The sales team is paying attention to some indicators to see whether or not they eventually advance in a cycle, and then we serve them a different experience. Especially with marketing automation, we treated this, companies historically have treated this very poorly, where we just beat you in the face with what we think you should do next, and without worrying about whether or not we're improving what you want to do now. And again, I'm not going to claim like I'm the white knight on this. Those people in malls who harass you trying to sell you cell phones?
Oh yeah.
I used to trade them. And fun fact, I can do that pitch in Spanish, even though I don't speak Spanish. But I can do, señor, un minuto, con que like I can run through that because like old school marketing automation, I didn't actually care what they said back to me. I was going to say the next Spanish phrase I had memorized. And then eventually they were either going to walk away or they were going to give me their credit card. And that same irritating mentality that I had in the mall is the same way that a lot of people approach marketing automation. And one of the things that really solved first of all, our conventional sales process, but definitely now that we've added in this additional layer of a different lead type, if you will, of people using the free tool, is getting really, really good at passing people between the community, between marketing qualification, between sales qualification, and then if they want to go back, they can go back. If you do a demo of HubSpot and you don't buy HubSpot, we're not going to spam you 14 times a week telling you why didn't you buy HubSpot. We're going to say, okay, you weren't ready for this, and the sales rep can actually list a set of reasons why they think they weren't ready to buy, and then we're going to serve you up an experience forever until you're ready to move forward, or we all get absorbed by the sun that explodes, whatever.
We'll already be in the other galaxy searching
Yeah.
for black holes by then.
There you go.
Key themes I'm listening there, or I'm hearing there, are listening is key, whether you're the CMO who just started or you're you're looking at how to retarget and sell people in your freemium tool. See how I'm trying to pull this all together with a consistent theme. And it sounds like you guys are also doing what's very smart, especially for a public company, is to play the long game and to think about the next 10 years, not just the next quarter. Sam, it's been a blast talking to you. I wish I could do it longer. I think everybody just witnessed a blossoming friendship in the making. You don't agree? You're like, no.
No, I agree. My only caveat is I'm going to bring the cigars. You can bring, I don't know, the beer or something like that. The scotch. Right. I'll bring the cigars.
Just because I didn't know what a humidor. It reminded me of a matador. That's what I was thinking. I thought it was just a matador that's humid.
Maybe matadors use humidors. I don't know.
Yeah, when they get humid.
Yeah.
All right, Sam, it's been a blast. Thank you so much. Now, I want to talk about if you want to read more about how not to fuck up your first 90 days as a CMO, it's on thinkgrowth.org. How to not F up your first 90 days as a CMO. A link will be in the show notes if you go to proposify.com/podcast. Look up this episode. If you're on YouTube looking at this, it'll be in the description. And also want to chat about, you may not even know this, Sam, but Proposify is a HubSpot partner. We're actually in the Connect program.
I did not know that. That's awesome. That's one of our new initiatives. I'm super excited about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've been a partner for a while now, over a year for sure, maybe a year and a half. You can integrate HubSpot CRM with Proposify. So if you need to send out proposals or deals to win new work, you can use both HubSpot and Proposify together. It's one of our most popular integrations. And of course, be sure to check out HubSpot.com if you're the two people on the planet who haven't heard of that and are in the sales and marketing game. I feel bad for you. Sam, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Kyle. It's been wonderful, wonderful talking to you. One of the things I want to leave people with is that you and I talked a lot about SaaS. We talked a lot about B2B. My argument, and you brought up Gary Vaynerchuk, is that all of these concepts are transferable. We have had more time to think about it in this B2B SaaS space. We've had an easier job because it's very, very measurable. They either keep paying us or they don't. As opposed to people who aren't held to contracts. Maybe you're selling shoes with Nike or something. All of the concepts are the same about the customer centricity, about the alignment between sales and marketing and retention. All of these concepts are universal business concepts. We just have a head start on it. So if you're listening to this, you're not a B2B SaaS company, I would encourage you to think about how this stuff can fit into your business model, because I have yet to run into a business model where it doesn't fit.
I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of people who listen to this podcast are actually in the agency space, which is, I know HubSpot, you guys deal with a lot of agencies as partners.
Right.
And I think where the agencies are probably a little behind SaaS companies are in terms of looking at KPIs and metrics and understanding the funnel. A lot still just kind of rely on word of mouth referrals, and they don't always track profitability or lifetime value or things like that, or look at upsells in the future. So yeah, I mean, I think studying SaaS is always in the best interest of any company, agencies, consultants, shoe salespeople. It's always just a good way to look at a business. And actually, closing thought was it's kind of funny. I was talking to a guy once who doesn't know SaaS. He's an investor, but he dealt in the telecom space back in the 90s, built a huge telecom company. They all use subscription metrics. CAC, LTV, MRR, average revenue per customer, like all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of funny. SaaS sort of almost pulled a lot of those metrics from subscription, old school subscription companies.
But even companies like Starbucks do, right? So Starbucks has an average customer lifetime value of over $14,000. And if you're the reason I counted 90 Starbuckses or whatever the plural is when I was walking around Manhattan. The reason they've got better Wi-Fi than I do at home sometimes, they've got these beautiful couches and everything else, is not because they're trying to spend $2 to sell a $6 cup of coffee. It's because they're trying to spend $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 to acquire and retain a $14,000 customer. So yeah, you're right. It's absolutely not limited to technology. It's absolutely not limited to SaaS. It's not even limited to B2B. I'll spoil my whole book. You don't have to buy How to Sell Better Than Amazon, because all I've done is take those concepts of SaaS economics, get really good at educating customers, really good at converting customers, even potentially losing money in the process, as long as you're really, really good at keeping customers. Once you've learned those lessons, then you can outcompete people, even at least in a narrow perspective, even people like Amazon who are focused on the broader perspective.
Well, it was very kind of you to spoil the book, but I'm sure there's going to be more value in that. So also, I wanted to just mention that to remember to check out How to Sell Better Than Amazon, written by Sam. If people want to get in touch with you outside of HubSpot, the context there, where can they what's your kind of most trafficked social media outlet?
So Twitter and LinkedIn are both good. And the bright side being, if you Google anything even close to my name, you'll find me. You can also hop on my website. There's a contact form if you want to reach out to me there. And then also the website inboundcommerce.com, which is a website for the book. There's a form there. But I'm not super picky when it comes to people I connect with on LinkedIn. I like talking to everybody. And it's the same on Twitter. I respond to every tweet. If you want to tweet me a question because you listen to this 6 months from now, I may have to go back and rewatch it to know what you were talking about, but we'll definitely have a conversation about it.
They'll ask you about Al Pacino trying out. Anyway, I feel there's more that we can talk about, but maybe if you're open to it in a little while, coming back on the show to geek out some more.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thanks, Kyle.
Take care.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the Proposify Biz Chat with Kyle Racky. For more episodes, check us out on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, or Google Play. Click subscribe to get updated on the latest episodes